Welcome, everyone. Welcome to What Just Happened. Today, we're with Christian Muche. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you very much, Christine, and thank you for the invitation.
It's really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Same. And thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, of course. Really excited. Please tell everyone what your background is and what you're up to.
So my name is Christian Muche. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Beyond Ordinary Events, who owns and runs the event Possible. So that's the event name which we launched last year in Miami for the very first time.
We want to hear about what you learned from the first year and even just why this came to be. Please share with us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to do this. MMA Global is the driving force in our industry as an association. And we both sit together some time ago, together with the network, the marketeers, and all the other players in the wider marketing industry, to think about why do we need a new kind of event which covers today's agenda, which covers today's challenges, and bring the industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, forward to the next level. And it has a lot to do with a right combination of technology topics on the industry side, but also on the consumer side. It has a lot to do with original marketing, media, and advertising topics, how to stay in touch with today's consumers and stay relevant as a brand. And as we all know, more and more cultural topics. Nothing happens today without any social or cultural impact. So these all comes together. And we believe that there was no event existing, especially in the US, which covers all these topics in today's world and make it an immersive experience. And this is important to understand. It's not just another conference. It's not just another small gathering of a few people. It has a couple of thousand industry leaders coming together with celebrities and talents. And it is a conference. It is an activation experience. It's really business oriented. So it's a B2B event. And this didn't simply exist.
We're seeing such huge conversion going on. My background is retail, but I started in consulting. I was at Deloitte, and there's a convergence going on that never existed before. And the way that you're broadly basing your activations, as you refer to them, really speak to that, because you cannot fight it. So you might as well embrace it. From what I could see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you have 3 pillars. I found them each to be interesting in and of their own right. You have consumer marketing and communication, which is obviously the core when you're talking about marketing. But then you add a second pillar, which is business and society, which really speaks to that obligation that has come about in terms of the impact that we all have on the greater culture that we are. And then the last one, which I find to be very interesting, and I think my listeners will find to be particularly interesting, is technology and innovation. And in that space is e-commerce, which is where my world lives, tech trends like AR and VR and retail within gaming, and of course, AI and innovation. Was there like weeks and weeks of discussion to try to figure out what those 3 would be? It's so hard. There's so much going on. How was the process in coming up with those 3? And then, of course, each of the pieces underneath those.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And exactly, you describe it in the right way, that we had weeks and weeks of discussions. It was, on the one hand, it was quite obvious that it all has to be included, but how to structure this, how to create this in an appropriate way so that you do not show up at the event and you're just overwhelmed by all these relevant topics. This is, I think, one of the biggest challenges for us every year again. So we have to listen. We have to spend hours and hours with our partners and listening to them, what's on their agenda, where they're heading to, how do they see the consumer world developing, and how do they believe, what kind of impact does it have for marketing? Because we would like to see it from a consumer perspective first, and not saying, okay, this is what our industry believes, this is the right thing to do. Because as we all know, consumers are in a much more, are in the driver's seat. They tell the brands what they want to see, how they would like to engage and connect it. And this is how we approach these topics. So what is relevant for the consumer? Why do they use that kind of technology? How do they consume content in today's world? And then bring it back to the marketing folks and say, okay, what does it mean for us? And how do we need to change marketing campaigns? How do we need to change storytelling? How do we approach consumers in a different way? It sounds pretty simple, I would say, but it's exactly the most important part, how to set up these discussions slightly different than all the usual ones. I don't want to see another event full of case studies, what happened in the past. This is all great, but provides a lot of experience and knowledge and insights. But it's more important to look forward and see what does it mean for the next couple of months, and what are the future campaigns, and why does it have to be here different here and more creative here. This is important for us to figure out. And then we came up with these structure, with these cluster of topics, which in other words exactly combines the technology, marketing, and culture I've mentioned before in a more detailed way, because we are having 200 speakers during the 2.5 days, more than 120 sessions. So it requires a decent number of sessions to cover all these topics. And then it comes down to our audience to select and be curated in the best way to get the benefit out of this.
I agree. And I think that one of the biggest challenges for an event like this, an event organizer, is how to say something different. We're at a lot of events now,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of talking going on and different formats. Maybe it's a case study, maybe it's a victory lap. I personally like the one with the bumps and the bruises, and wow, we really messed up, and then this is how we got out of it. To me, those are like the most fun. But you really have to make sure that you're providing different information. And looking at your agenda, I see those nuggets there that are different from other types of discussions going on. So I applaud you for that. One of the things you mentioned is talking about the marketing and the consumer. And that's interesting because, again, my experience at Cannes Lion is that the consumer is not really in the discussion there. It's an award, and they're expanding that discussion because it's like, can we pull the lens out a little bit and understand that this is actually happening, so that there's a bond to the product, and the bond creates commerce. It may be dirty, but that's why everyone's doing what they're doing. And I think that to your extent, you are pulling that lens out. You're saying, we want the consumer here, but you don't just want them there for belly laughs. This is a business. Can we chat about that for a little bit?
Absolutely. I think you're right. There are events out there like the Cannes Lions. I would also agree that's time. There's a time for celebration, right? And what we achieved as an industry. And therefore, I would agree, this is Cannes Lions in the best way you can do it. And then there's a time to look forward and look also into the challenges which are ahead of us. And this is, by the way, also the reason why we came up with this, I think, fantastic name of Possible for the event, which is a positive way, a positive framework to look in all these challenges. We are not blonde. We are not saying everything is great and we're doing perfectly well as an industry. There are many challenges, but it doesn't matter to look back and say this was the past, and these are another, as I said before, a couple of case studies. We want to look forward and say, okay, let's face it, and all together we can solve it. We have the technology in place. We have the knowledge about the consumers. We have all the data. So we have the insight and the knowledge to make it better. And this is exactly how we set up Possible. But as you said, it has to be a very curated, a very personal way. And again, it sounds pretty simple, but you have to spend with your team. My team spends days and weeks and months listening to the market and get the most out of it. And then we are the gatekeepers in terms of, we have to set up then the stage, we have to set up the agenda, we have to filter what's really relevant. And I believe we have the best team in the world doing this. And this is hopefully the outcome. If you look onto the agenda, identifying also new faces, innovators. It could be from a big brand, it could be from a startup. Why we're also involving startups, by the way, and not just the big companies. It's a combination of both. And this provides all these fantastic, creative, innovative outcome. It's our job to bring A and B and C together and set all expectations and meet the expectations. It's difficult with a couple of thousand people being on site, but this is the fun doing this.
You're like, why did I do this? It's such hard work.
Sometimes.
It is a little nerve-wracking because you put your heart and your soul in it, and you can feel that. I love the word possible. My favorite kind of idiom is the power of possibility. It can take you out of such despair. It's just this beacon that you work towards, and it's so important.
You see a lot of topics around this word game, possibilities, etc. And this is what we would like to see, that people really embrace this and use this as an opportunity. We are treating this as a boutique event, which is a very intimate event, but scale it up to a couple of thousand participants, attendees, and more than 120, 130 partners companies partnering with us in different ways this year. Scaling this up, but still keep it as a personal boutique experience. I think this is exactly what we try to do here.
In our industries, which blend, which is why we're here, there's always like a new kid on the block. So it was like the Web 3 and the metaverse. And then it was like, get out of here, kid.
Mhm.
Next thing is whatever. And I know last year, big on your agenda was retail media networks, which are really big still for us in my industry. And people are there in their first inning, really, basically. But I would guess that covering that is not as big on your agenda percentage wise as would be AI. So much over the past 18 months, like how are you crafting the agenda? Because a lot of people go to events and get AI fatigue too, because a lot of the content is, we don't exactly know, but we know it's coming. And you just hear that over and you're like, okay, what? Talk to me
Exactly.
about
Yes.
how you handling that.
As you said, retail media is not, you can't compare it with a tech topic like AI or metaverse in the past, etc. As you said, Web3. You can't hardly compare this, but it's definitely one of our top 3 topics for this year, or not just this year, I would assume, next to inclusion and equality, which is the third one we are focusing on. So retail media is definitely a very hot topic. There are a lot of big and also new players on the block, as you said, very important. Coming back to your question in regards to AI, this is like every tech trend, I have to say, in the last decade or so. Everybody jumps on it. You see a lot of PowerPoint presentation on stage. It means you listen to a lot of theoretical stuff, and then you're stuck. You go back to your team, you go back into your office, and you're stuck. What does it mean for me? This is the reason why it has to be explained, hopefully in a different way, with also new brands and faces on stage. But also it has to be an immersive experience that you are able then, at the same time, being there for 2.5 days, to sit down with those partners who can really help you and have, whether it's a hardware conceptual or a software solution. This is exactly the part of the exposition or activation space, whatever you call it. It's not 3 miles away where you have to, more or less 2 events happening at the same time. Here's a conference, here's an exposition. It's an integrated part. So as an attendee, you can listen to the best people in the world who has the deepest insights into AI, as an example, and then sit down with all the relevant players who can help you right away in terms of your marketing strategy or your company topics you have to address internally. This is exactly why we do what we do and why we have both parts, conference and exposition, all together in one big venue. It happens inside, outside. This is one of the reasons why we went to Miami. So you're not stuck in a windowless trade hall for 2.5, 3 days. So it's a great experience in many ways, but this is exactly another conference presenting AI PowerPoint presentations. That wouldn't be the solution, and this doesn't help anybody.
Okay. So you're right. I would add a third piece that, from what I can tell, how you'll address it. So you've got the right people on stage. You've
Yeah.
got your exposition where people can absorb at their own pace and self-direct. And
Yeah.
then you have the startup zone. And my guess is the startup component of this is very heavily AI. What would you say percentage-wise is so-and-so taught AI?
To be honest, I don't think that it's the majority of startups who are joining. Yes, it's represented there as well, but I have to check back. But I wouldn't say the majority. It's really that people understand it's all about every corner of marketing, and AI is a part of this. But we do not want to focus solely on that and then forget the other things and the other areas. But yes, startup is an important part. There are all the innovations coming from the fresh, young, small companies, which are then growing over the time. We are not an investor platform. Investors are part of our audience, but we are trying to connect the startups, the small businesses, with the business side. And this is all about what Possible is also representing: business opportunities. It's about networking, great content. It's about connecting the right people, and this ends up in business opportunities. I've heard people telling me they met at Possible last year, and they initiated great businesses and transaction out of this. And this is the best thing which could happen. This is what I would love to hear more and more, that in addition to all these, what we can also see at other events, content, networking, that's the third part: business opportunities, creating business opportunities.
That is the gold standard for sure. If you're having that good engagement, that's a golden ticket right there. Because my area is a focus on retail centric, retail
Yeah.
adjacent, can we chat a little bit about the e-commerce piece that you have listed under technology and innovation? Is there anything you can add on that?
It's heavily driven by our partners. The beauty is that we have, I think, a very broad range of activation from these e-commerce or retail media partners. They look into this opportunity very differently, which I love it.
I'm mentioning it is because in a marketing centric event like this with broad strokes,
Yeah,
you're recognizing the commerce part of it and you have it on your agenda, and that speaks to the people who are listening to this show to check it out, learn more. And since it's B2B, it could either be from retailers or it could be from solution providers who are in some way in the speaking
yeah.
to consumers, engaging with consumers. I do applaud that.
The benefit is if you're acting in the e-commerce space is and retail media space, it will be connected to all the other, corners of the marketing world. And this is exactly what provides you hopefully with the best outcome here. So you have some specific insiders and visionaries giving you updates or providing you with updates. And then you can easily say, okay, now I'm looking into other areas, into a broader world. This is exactly what Possible represents, and not just focusing on one dedicated area like e-commerce or retail media. This is important to understand. And therefore, this brings me to the next comment or question, is that we say we are having the broadest inventory for our partners and our audience, which you can imagine. I really believe this. I see that the market is requiring a different format and a different concept. What our chance is as Possible is to set the stage for today's next generation of events. And this is when attendees come on site, you should be prepared not just to sit in a conference room all day long, or not just sitting in a networking session all day long. You have plenty of more opportunities. And this is why we asked to be there for 3 days and not just doing the typical one day and then you're leaving already. This makes sure you get all the benefits out of this. It's so much variety we're offering because the range of expectations are so much more and so much more diverse than a couple of years ago. I believe we are at the forefront of these event experiences.
I want to congratulate you and I want to thank you because I do believe you are at the forefront. I also think the name is so perfect because it gives you a lot of fluidity where you really are not tied down by naming yourself, tying yourself to any one aspect of the industry. It's very broad. You can have that fluidity. Something is building and it's a hot topic. You can bring that in as the market and the businesses want. They're knowledge seeking and engaging with people in these spheres is at its all-time high. It's a lot of it's driven because there's all this newness out there, this generative AI, and then it's getting everyone to think about their data, about how they're communicating with customers, and everything is getting blown up. So this will be a provider of a ton of information in those realms. I want to congratulate you, and I want to thank you for coming on What Just Happened.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for inviting me and have the opportunity to talk to your audience.
See you in Miami.
See you there.